Torah Rabaya Eloheinu, we Elohe Abotenu, Elohe Abraham, Elohe Yitzchak, we Elohe Yisrael, El Gibor Nora, El Gomer Kol Debarim, we Gam Kin Ha El Hagorim Kol Debal Al Haaretz, Ha El Asher Bara Et Hashamayim, we Gam Kin Kol Zebaam, we Gam Kin Ha El Asher Bara Et Haaretz, we Gam Et Hayam, we Gam Kin Kol Asher Bam. Babak Washaya, Ha'el Ashel Hamzak et Bnei Yisrael Lihiyot, Mezera Abraham, Mezera Yiskak, Umizera Yaakov, Lihiyot Am Segula La Amka, Tikwabel na Tefilotinu Naya, Wagam King Tirkatsna Kulanu Mekal Zarenu, Tirkatsna et Bnei Yisrael Mekol Maklenu. Tirpa na etko b'nei Yisrael meko kali na ya el Elohe Yisrael tiye na im amka be'eretz ha'ma'ara pazeh be'eretz ha'kwedma be'eretz ha'nageb u'agam ken ha'eretz hazafon tiye na im hazkwanim wa'hazkwanot ha'banim wa'habnot u'agam ken anashim wa'nashim u'agam ken kol b'nei amka be'beit ha'soharim u'agam ken tiye na im gam ken Lihiyot itam banakwi naya. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Amen. Amen. First and foremost, giving honor and praise unto the Creator and the Maker of heaven and earth. This presentation right here is due to this book that was spoken of before within the Hebrew class. And more information will be given concerning it about how to acquire it as such. On the first account, want to give honor and praise unto the Creator and the Maker of heaven and earth. On a human level, want to give much respect to the chief men of Shema Yisrael, from principal and to his sons on down, for even allowing the time for even this to even be done in such a time and in such a place. On a quote-unquote Monday, quote unquote, holiday, and so forth. Now, one of the things to start off in the intro is basically to let it be noted that the concept and the understanding of saying that the Torah, which is the first 5 books of the Bible, commonly understood as Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, is a plagiarized thing from ancient Egypt. And as will be presented in this PowerPoint presentation, anybody who says such does not understand either the culture of the ancient Egyptians, nor do they understand the culture of the ancient Hebrews. It is not the thought of ancient Egyptians who came up with the teaching of saying the Hebrews across the Sinai and what we understand as the Levant came over and then they copied our culture. It is not the thought of the ancient Hebrews to say, when they went down south past Beersheba and winded up going into the land of Egypt, as if to say, well, when we went over there, we got a culture. Here's the point. Neither the Egyptians nor the Hebrews said that they got their culture from the ancient Egyptians. So who came up with that concept? We're going to discuss that in part during this presentation. Now, Ma'at, as it was called in ancient Egypt, was one of their goddesses. You understand? And in that particular concept and ideology that they had, they said that there were certain principles that supposedly was the parent to the 10 Commandments. But as we know, the 10 Commandments, you understand, starting off as saying, Anoki Ya Eloheka, I am the Lord thy God. Asher ho zetika, me eretz Mitzrayim mi beit abadim, who brought you from the land of Egypt out of the house of bondage. Lo yihyeh leka Elohim akerim al panai. Thou shalt not have any other gods before me. Ain't no way in the world a concept such as thou shalt not have any other gods before me came out of Egyptian culture. Lo ta'aseh leka fesel wakal temuna. But shamayim, oba aretz, oba yam ashel mitakat la aretz. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image of anything in the heaven above, the earth beneath, or the waters underneath the earth. Lo tishtakawe lahem wa lo ta'abdain. Thou shalt not bow down to them nor serve them. That's not coming out of an Egyptian concept to say don't make any images of anything and then not to bow down unto it, because the ancient Egyptians worship the things that were created. The Most High is saying anything that you see, do not bow down unto it. You understand? And worshiping it. Not that you don't respect your elders and bow down to, you understand, like a leader of a place or so forth and so on. But what's being stated is you do not make your own thing and then sit there and fashion it after the creation that the Most High has made and then say, now this is what I'm going to do. You don't do that. You don't do what Akhenaten did and say, oh, we're going to make the sun, have rays come from it, and then we're going to pour libations. That's against the commandments of the Most High. That is what I wanted to sit there and point out in that particular case. You understand? Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. How in the world can the Sabbath be coming out of ancient Egyptian Ma'at principles when Ma'at principles did not have a Sabbath, did not have a prohibition against idolatry? It's impossible for such to be the case. So when you look at the principles of Ma'at, when you look at the writings of Ptahhotep, and then when you look at the Ten Commandments, it was a people, neither Egyptian nor Hebrew, that said, oh, one must have gotten it from the other. Because when you read the cultures of each individually, they don't even claim to even be the forebearer of the other. So this is something I want to point out for edification purposes. All right. So now, Torah comes from Ma'at. That's a question. You see that on there on the screen, right? Right? Okay. Principle number 13 says, I have not made anyone cry. Now, if the Torah came from Ma'at, why does the Torah not speak about not making anybody cry? Children are made to cry when they get a spanking. I've gotten one. It's not the best feeling. Sometimes an argument can cause somebody to sit there and cry. You understand? Sometimes in war, people walk away and they may feel emotional and may cry. You understand? Ecclesiastes in the scriptures, it says what? A time to cry and a time to laugh. So how can the culture of the Hebrews, which is saying there is a time to cry, then sit there and come from a culture saying, I have not made anyone to cry? Come on, we have to deal with some understanding, all right? Principle number 24, I have not disobeyed the law. Question is, what law is that talking about? All right? Principle number 39, I have not stolen from or disrespected the deceased. Now, one of the things they always try to ask Israelites is, where is your deceased? But this says you wasn't even supposed to disrespect or steal from them. So how are you going to ask me for the tomb of the prophet Zechariah when you was never supposed to find the tomb of most of fourth? Come on, now something is wrong. You're trying to take a Hamitic Egyptian culture and use that as a catalyst to try to use against the house of Israel. But it ain't going to work, baby. Continue. Next slide, please. Torah comes from Ma'at question mark. It should be obvious that the cultures are different, the people are different, and the reasoning for each lifestyle are different. The culture, geography, land, climate, and principles for each of the people are different. You understand? This is something I want to point out with the geography, because they viewed Egypt in what is normally would have been called the southern part as upper, and what would have been called the northern part as lower because of the flow of the Nile. The Jordan River and the Nile River flows in the opposite direction. So therefore, geography-wise, the land of ancient Israel and the land of ancient Egypt was not the same. The climate is different because they depend on the overflow of the Nile for irrigation and so forth and so on, for crops and everything like that. And when it went back down, they called the land that was settled thereafter Kemet, aka Kemet, which literally means then the black land. That was the physical land, not saying that the people were not black itself. So now getting back to the point of this, the climate of ancient Israel, Deuteronomy tells you the former rain and the latter rain. So the climate of each is different. The land is different. The cultures are different. Geography is different. And the principles for each of the people are different. We'll see those who say one culture came from the other don't understand the individual cultures. Next slide, please, brother. Tacitus remarks. Now, Tacitus is a Roman, a white man, a historian that lived in what you may consider to be the first century AD. Here's what he says. Moses, this is an external reference to the prophet Moses. So there was no ancient historian from Livy to Pliny to Herodotus to Tacitus to Eusebius to the rest of them that actually was saying, well, there was nobody by the name of Moses among the Israelites. That's only in the New Age Kemet presentation that they want to sit there and give. The Illuminati funded Kemet that they want to sit there and present to the people saying, well, we're going to use Egypt as a catalyst to go against the Bible. You can't do that. Such is not even intelligent. All right? It says Tacitus remarks, Moses, wishing to secure for the future his authority over the nation, gave them a novel form of worship opposed to all practiced by other men. Remember, it says opposed. It's different than every other culture that was there. That is what Moshe or Moses gave them. Things sacred with us, the Romans, with them, the Jews, aka the Israelites, have no sanctity. They abstain from swine's flesh. We are told that the rest of the seventh day was adopted because this day brought with it a termination of their toils. This is talking about keeping the Shabbat. We already went over that in Exodus 20 when I was speaking, saying, Zakor et Yom HaShabbat L'Quad Show. So this is some of the examples, such as not eating pork, such as keeping the Sabbath, that the ancient house of the Israelites was doing, that was opposed to all that's practiced by other men. Continue on. Next slide, please. Tacitus remarks again, quite different is there the Jews about things divine. The Egyptians worship many animals and images of monstrous form. The Jews have purely conceptions of deity, that is to say of God, as one in essence. They call those profane who made representatives of God in human shape of perishable materials, meaning that the children of Israel, when the Romans met them from Pompey, Julius Caesar, on down to Augustus Caesar, on down to Tiberius Caesar, on down to Caligula, on down to Claudius, on down when you get to the era of rapping with Vespasian and Trajan and Nero and Titus and Domitian and the rest of them and so forth and so on. What's going on is the Israelites were saying, no, we can't even have any of your images inside of our temple. You understand? It says what? They call those profane who made representatives of God in human shape of perishable materials. That means you can't sit there and sculpt something out and just say, this is the image of the Most High God. They say that is profane. Ancient Egypt culture was different. Next. The priesthoods. Now, it says this is coming from the portion called Leviticus 21. And Yah spoke unto Moshe, speak unto the priests, the sons of Aharon, and say unto them, there shall none defile himself for the dead among his people. They shall not make baldness upon their head, neither shall they shave off the corners of their beard, nor make any cuttings in their flesh. So this is something to be noted for edification purposes. The priests of the ancient house of Israel didn't go around like this guy who was a priest in ancient Egypt, bald and beardless. Because the children of Israel and their priesthood kept their beard and they kept their hair. So this is something I want to point out to show you another distinction between the ancient Egyptian culture and the culture of ancient Israel. Another aspect to sit there and get into, if we will, is if the priesthood is different and they are the spiritual holders of the culture of a people, then obviously the culture itself is different. Continue. Daniel chapter 7 verse 9. I beheld two thrones were placed, and one that was ancient of days did sit. His raiment was white as snow, was as white snow, and the hair of his head like pure wool. Now it says the ancient of days, an anthropomorphic form of the Most High. It says that his hair was white like pure wool. And here the Lux soap commercial, it says won't shrink wool. And this is supposed to be a racist ad of black people, and his hair or her hair as a child there is called wool. But the one that was held in high regard as the Ancient of Days, it says his goal was fiery flames, and the wheel thereof burning fire. But We see exactly what the world always knew, who had hair like lamb's wool. Black people. But this is coming from the book that the ancient Kemetic, pardon me, the modern New Age Kemetic community wants to say, this is the white man's book. How in the world is that the white man's book when the one that has a fiery thrones around him and thrones are placed in one that was of the ancient of days did sit, and this is of a figure of authority? How is that person pictured with the white man himself know to be of woolly hair? Come on now, let's get our understanding together. Next. Imperial Papyrus, this is dated to the era of the Middle Kingdom, all right? And it says in part, indeed, men slaves, their hearts sad. Indeed, pestilences throughout the land. Exodus chapter 9:15 says this, surely now I have put forth my hand and smitten thee and thy people with pestilence, and thou hast been cut off from the earth. So what's going on? Imperial Papyrus is speaking about pestilence being there. And it's the Most High who's stating that he's the one who brought that pestilence. Now, in the book I wrote entitled Egypt Talk and Writing, I went over the fact that spoke about how the Imperial Papyrus, the dating of it, why it shows about it being of the Asiatic slaves and so forth and so on. Next slide, please. Imperial Papyrus 2 says this, indeed, men are few, and he who places his brother in the ground is everywhere. Indeed, female slaves are free with their tongues. So here we speak of men are few, he who places his brother in the ground is everywhere. Female slaves, but they try to tell you there's no way that the people of ancient Egyptians had slaves, ever. So let me ask this question. If you're saying that the Bible is a plagiarized from the culture and the people of ancient Egypt, and the Bible does speak about slaves, slavery, enslavement, what part of ancient Egyptian culture did they get that from to have the Bible speaking about slaves? It's the slaves. If the Bible, pardon me, was a copy of ancient Egyptian stuff. There are many people who are online who may say, no Egypt, no Bible. So if that's the case, and there's people in the Bible spoken of as slaves and slave masters and so forth and so on, how can that be if ancient Egypt had no slaves? So you can't. So this is just something I wanted to be noted for edification purposes. All right. It says, okay, go on to the next slide, please. It says, Imperial Papyrus Part 3. Indeed, scribes are killed and their writings are taken away. It says, the above passage from Imperial Papyrus, especially the last one cited, shows a lot. The scribes were killed. Their writings were taken away. Who did that and why? Are you trying to hide something? Were the people trying to hide the fact that they were enslavers? Are the people trying to sit there and hide the pestilence that was coming upon them? Because it says what? Emphatically, scribes are killed and their writings are taken away. But they want to give to the world a romanticized Egypt that has everything was there and all the records was there and it's dynamic. But yet, within its own record, it talks about records not being it. Next. The oppression of Israel. We are in the book of Exodus chapter 1 verse 8. Now there arose a new king over Egypt who knew not Joseph. Next. The oppression of Israel part 2. Josephus book 2. They, speaking of the Egyptians, they also became very ill affected toward the Hebrews, as touched with envy at their prosperity. For when they saw how the nation of the Israelites flourished and will become eminent already and plenty of wealth, which they had acquired by their virtue and natural love of labor, they thought their increase was to their own detriment. All right, so getting down toward the end of that paragraph, here is what we read. It says the following. It says, and to build walls, speaking about the Israelites enslaved in Egypt according to Josephus, and to build walls for their cities and ramparts that they might restrain the river and hinder its waters from stagnating upon its running over its own banks. They set them also to build pyramids. Now, I wanted to sit there and get into highlighting the aspect of the things that the children of Israel were doing. Because you can't sit there and what this is being presented as is not an attack upon ancient Egypt. No, it's to clarify some of the situations. You understand? This is to sit there and let it be noted from the children of Israel what we are sitting up here teaching, knowing, and understanding against the so-called conscious community, against the so-called Kemetic community that is trying to use ancient Egypt as the catalyst against the ancient house of Israel. And they're going to work, as we stated. You understand? So let's go on. Oppression of Israel, part 3. It should be noted that the 12th dynasty ruler, Amenemhat I, father, did not rule. The ruler before him was Mentuhotep III or 4th, depending upon which list one goes by. An Egyptian record called the Prophecy of Nefertiti speaks of the Egyptians getting rid of the Amu or the Asiatics from Egypt. Now, when you go in your own time into Egypt, Canaan, and Israel by Radford, you will find out that the Egyptian terminology Amu identified the people of the Asiatics, but it was a generic term. So that means these Asiatics could have been calling themselves by their own individual names. And when you have a respect for one's culture, name, and people and nation, we have to know and understand that. We can't look at ancient Asiatics through the eyes of the ancient Egyptians and say, oh, well, they're just all Asiatics. You can't do that. That's not a respect for another man or woman. Let the people define who their own souls are. All right, let's go on to the next slide, please. Oppression of Israel, part 4. David Rowe, who is respected by some but not by others, okay, he states in his book the following. This book is called Pharaohs and Kings. No Israelite settlement has ever been found in the 19th dynasty. Occupational levels where the Orthodox chronology predicted its geographical location or locus. On the other hand, dig down below the 19th dynasty capital and reach the city of Avaris, the vast majority of the population of which was Asiatic. He goes on to say in a book on page 271, the initial influx of Asiatics into the region of the Katana appears to be during the late 12th dynasty, with the first settlement concentrated at the site of Tel El Dab'a. This later became Avaris. Now, the same place that's now commonly referred to as Tel El Dab'a, the same place that was in the past called Avaris, was called in ancient times, as pointed out in my book. Was called Peru Nefer. It was called at one time Rawati, and it was another time later on called Ramses. All right, next slide, please. Oppression of Israel, part 5. Slavery existed in Egypt. Not until the Middle Kingdom is there evidence of use of number of foreigners, Nubians, and Asiatics. I want this to be noted for those who are able to see. Can you focus the camera on me as opposed to just the slide, please, for a minute? Let me know what's going on, bro. Good? All right, Nubians and Asiatics. The Nubians were south of where ancient Egypt was. Slavery existed in Egypt, not until the Middle Kingdom. We're going to focus on the Middle Kingdom, all right? Is there evidence of use of number of foreigners, Nubians and Asiatics, as domestic servants in Egypt? In another case, now this is coming from a book called The Egyptian Kingdoms by A. Leslie. All right, and this part underneath says, in another case, a wife was left, among other things, 4 and more Asiatic slaves. This is coming from Egypt, Canaan, and, pardon me, this is coming from Egypt, Land of the Pharaohs by Sir Alan Gardiner. In another case, a wife was left, redundant on purpose, among other things, 4 and more Asiatic slaves. So how do we get the distinction between these Asiatics that was noted as the Amu in the past and these Asiatics that were the slaves? Reality between domestic servants and slaves. It depends on which one you want to sit there and feel comfortable saying. That's what it boils down to. We're going to get into the subject of slavery later on. All right? Next slide, please. Can you focus it off of me and back to as it was, bro? Thank you. Oppression of Israel. Good? As it was before? Bless. Oppression of Israel, part 6. This right here is part of what they refer to, brothers and sisters, as the mud brick pyramids. All right, the mud brick pyramids built during the 12th dynasty. All right, if you remember the Bible in Exodus 5, it speaks about how the people were made to go and get straw to make brick. The ancient Egyptians basically used stone in the old kingdom to build things. But by the time the middle kingdom came along, they used a lot of their stuff made out of brick because the Asiatics, which inclusive of the children of Israel, were used to using that as their manual labor. So I want this to be noted for edification purposes. Just like the European, the white man used the Yoruba as slaves in South Carolina because they was good with the rice, so did they sit there in ancient Egypt, use the children of Israel, aka the Asiatics in part, to sit there and build with bricks because they were already used to the usage of bricks. All right, next slide, please. Oppression of Israel, part 7. This is another visual aspect of what they call the mud brick pyramids. Now, some people trying to be disrespectful, like, oh, that thing is just so small. Yet, we live in apartments that are smaller than houses. Some of us live in houses that are smaller than mansions. Some may have a mansion that's even smaller in quality than what is referred to as a lanai. But what have we built? To sit there and say that these people who were enslaved during this time, trying to insult them, saying, oh, that's just something that's just small. Because you have the same concept towards slavery in ancient Egypt that the European white people, American today, have about the black man in South and North Carolina in the 1700s. That's why. Next, here we go on to the next slide, please. Oppression of Israel, part 5. You shall no more give the people straw to make brick, as stated earlier, as heretofore. Let them go and gather straw for themselves. And this is from an airplane or something of that sort, taking a picture of what is referred to as the mud brick pyramid, looking at it from angled north, south, or upper to lower. All right, next slide, please. External sources. Okay, so I wanted to sit there and have this to be noted because people are like, oh, the Israelites only deal with the Bible. They don't have any other kind of references. You're incorrect. All right. Flinders Petrie, a noted archaeologist, spoke of or on the Asiatics in Egypt. It is undeniable that the inhabitants used foreign wares which were derived from the Asian islands or from Syria, Palestine. All right, the pyramid builders of ancient Egypt, page 188 for that reference. The Egyptians did not leave on record themselves never being slave masters. I wanted that to be noted, please. The Egyptians, as the book I wrote points out, erased records. Other ancient historians from Artapanus all the way down to Rogers, that's J.A. Rogers, spoke on the Hebrews being enslaved in Egypt. You know, it wasn't until black people being enslaved here, and it was noted some black people that were reading during slavery times saying, wow, we are just like the Hebrews that was in the land of Egypt. We're going to have a Moses that's going to be like that and come in to save us. That's when they decided to say, no, that slavery didn't happen. Just like they're trying to sit there and have textbooks in the schools today say that slavery did not happen. You understand? It's the same kind of Illuminati created concept. They are trying to say that the black people in North America and the West Indies were not enslaved. Just like they want to sit there and say that the children of Israel were not enslaved in the land of Egypt. Yet, as pointed out, the Egyptians did not leave on record. We were never enslavers. They never made that claim. It's only the New Age Kemet Society under the auspices of the Illuminati that tried to sit there and make that. All right, Tom Sheik, continue. Next slide, please. Chronology. All right. Now, the reason why I wanted to go over that is because, can I be seen? No, I don't want to see. All right, here's my suggestion with the time allotted. With the people who are saying that the brother was telling me people want to read along, this is going to be posted up on YouTube. And for those who are able to, maybe, no offense intended, pause it in your own time. Okay, I hear you. Pause it in your own time in the future, even though you want to see it on the screen as such, which is a blessing. All right, now, chronology. I went over this and mentioned this because of the simple fact that there are some who try to sit there and say, give us a date. We need a date. What's going on with your dating? That's what I'm going to ask you. What's going on with your dating? Throwing it back at you. Chronology. The chronology of ancient Egypt is done in aspects of what is referred to as King's List, the Abydos list, second intermediate period. Not all the kings such as Akhenaten, Tut, Ai, and Hatshepsut are on that list. The Saqqara list, found in 1860 and dated to the time of Ramses II. Hatshepsut is not mentioned. That was a woman who ruled. Among the pharaohs also are not mentioned. Next. Chronology part 2. The Medinet Habu list goes from Amenhotep III to Horemheb. So that means it skips Akhenaten and I. But Akhenaten would have been Amenhotep IV, but he changed his name from Amenhotep to Akhenaten. So in what is referred to as the Medinet Habu list, it skips Akhenaten on purpose. The Marseille Steel list, Akhenaten or Hatshepsut nor I, Tut are mentioned on the list. And this would have been, had it been all accurate, they would have mentioned all those kings. Why are they leaving off the names of certain kings? Is because they did not like you. They did not put you on that list. So how then can you now use that same type of Saqqara, Abydos, Medinet, Habu, Marseille Steel list, and then try to come to the house of Israel and say, where's your list at? You got to get your own list together and make sure all your people are mentioned. All right? It says Ramesseum king list. The same are not listed. This becomes important later in the matter of Akhenaten. Next slide, please. Chronology part 3. Many state that the records left from Manetho are not currently known. All right, now Manetho was an Egyptian priest that was working for one of the Ptolemies. You understand? And he made up the commonly understood king's list. But the Manetho king list is said to be today unknown. So people say they don't know what in the world that Manetho wrote. So in that being the case, let's go on. Thus, one may have to ask if the records mainly used from the Palermo from Dynasty 5, the Abydos and Saqqara, all the way from Dynasty 19, and the Royal Turin Papyrus, also from Dynasty 19, are used and all date prior to the time of Dynasty 20. How can we account for the list of kings after Dynasty 20? So when you speak about the third intermediate period and the late period and the other periods of that sort, and at the same token saying that we don't have the records from Manetho, how in the world then, if you're taking all the kings list dated to prior to Dynasty 20, how did you get the list after that? They get it from what is referred to as scarabs. So they sit there and still don't know who all the kings of ancient Egypt were. So they'll sit there, pick up this one, and this scarab and say, oh, okay, well, that was probably king, that was probably king, and we'll take all of them together, and then now we sit there and get a list. And they'll throw some dates up upon there, and then now they're trying to use that same bunched up thing that was created against the house of Israel. That's not a good catalyst. You got to come better than that. All right, so we're going to go now into our next slide, please. Chronology part 4. The so-called intermediate periods have proved to be particularly awkward phases, partly because there was often more than one ruler or simultaneously in different parts of the country. Same thing happened in the New Egypt here called America. You know, you had Abraham Lincoln as the president of the United States of America. And you also had Jefferson Davis, who was president of the Confederate States of America, and a vice president by the name of Alexander Stephens. Did you know that? That there was one time 2 separate Americas? But yet, when they go over the list of the presidents, Alexander Stephens and Jefferson Davis don't get any press. But yet, Jefferson Davis was the son-in-law, in part, in his history, to Zachary Taylor. Zachary Taylor was the 12th president of the United States of America. You understand? In the 1840s. So knowing history and going over some aspects, how then, if you have it to where this chronology is even saying concerning ancient Egypt, that they have different rulers ruling in the same country, how do you sit there and then give me a timeline? When you got within the same time 2 different dynasties or 2 different rulers. Next. Oh, by the way, this is coming from a book from my source. It's just called Ancient Egypt by Shaw, S-H-A-W, is the reference for this. All right? Which will be posted later on. References are cited within the book itself. If you disagree with what I cited, then that's just what that is. All right, next. Let's bring it home, Israel. The Assyrian rulers from Tiglath-Pileser III to Esarhaddon, all of them being Assyrian kings, all spoke of the Israelites confirming the biblical record. Now, Tiglath-Pileser said the following: I received tribute from the Hoyahs of Judah. This is coming from a book called The Ancient Near East, edited by Pritchard, James Pritchard. You can get that book online, page 193. I received tribute from Menahem of Samaria, the ancient Near East, the same king, on page 193. Says they overthrew their king Pekah, and I placed Hoshea as their king over them, the ancient Near East. By James Pritchard, he was citing Tiglath-Pileser, the king of Assyria, page 194. So just want to use this for edification purposes. We cite our sources. You understand? We're not coming off the top of our head, just with the Bible. It is nothing wrong with using the scriptures. That's the word of the Most High God. You understand? Now, it says in the scriptures, in the Torah, it says a matter is established by 2 or 3 witnesses. So here you got the record left by Tiglath-Pileser, then you got the biblical record. 2, next. Let's bring it home, part 2. Sargon, who was the successor of Shalmaneser V, speaks of taking captive of Samaria. You can go to Hebrewisms of West Africa by Joseph Williams on page 123 for that, where he is cited as saying the following: I carried away 27,290 of its inhabitants. I collected their 50 chariots. The remnants of them I permitted to retain their goods, put my governors over them, and I laid the tribute of former kings upon them. The tribute of former kings upon them. I put my governors over them. Let's bring that kind of concept to now. And this is something that happened in the 8th century BCE, 721, 722 BCE. Now, that's when this happened. So let's try to understand something. Rome came to be Rome came to be an empire in what is referred to as 27 BC. All right. Just want that to be noted for edification purposes. Rome under Augustus became an empire in 27 BC because Augustus died in 1480. He was the nephew of Julius Caesar. Prior to that, the people of Rome, they created what they called the Republic in the year 509 BCE. And prior to that, when those people got rid of the original people of Italy called the Etruscans, who had what they was doing all the way from time immemorial, like about something hundred or something thousand BCE, you had it to where they created this understanding of saying in 753 BCE, Romulus and Remus were the people who created the city of Rome. 753 BCE is when Rome began to sit there and see itself flourish. By then, the children of Israel were on their way out from being written off inside of historical records. Here's another point. You got it to where the Bible and the Assyrian record is confirming each other about the Israelites losing. So if the Israelites left the record about being defeated by the Assyrians, it stands to reason, good and well, brothers and sisters, that there's no way in the world that one can sit there and try to say that the Bible is impossible for it to be true. Next slide, please. Let's bring it home. All right, remember it says I put my governors over them? This kind of situation in modern times. Put my governors over them. See? They hired one that looks even somewhat like them. Next. Let's bring it home. They tribute of former kings on them. When the tribute was not paid, the city was besieged. Just to say, when you don't pay your rent or your mortgage, here comes Mr. Marshall guy. You understand? That's what happens when you're under tribute. King Hosea did not pay the tribute. Samaria was besieged. You pay somebody for a place to live and stay in peace means that you are under subjection of the one that you're paying. It's the similar situation of today. Ain't that drastic of a difference? Next. The Assyrian came down. Now, all of this is talked about in the book that I wrote too. All right? Nineveh, the land of Israel, said the Assyrian came down. To read about that, we can go in the Bible in 2 Kings 17. This right here says the Syrian Empire. And it shows about the travel of the captive people, of the people of Judah and of the northern kingdom of Israel, when they were taken into the Assyrian provinces. All right, so I just want this to be noted and understood. Next slide, please. The Assyrian and Babylonian matter. Now, one of the things to point out is that by the time Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon, who was Nebuchadnezzar's father, by the time he came along the scene, brothers and sisters, you had it to where the ancient Assyrians and the ancient Babylonians were at war one with another. Now, during the era of what we call Tiglath-Pileser and Shalmaneser and so forth and so on, the Assyrians were ruling over in Babylonian lands. But by the time you get to the era of after with Sargon of Assyria and everything like that, you had the guy named Merodach-Baladan, also written up in the scriptures in the book of Jeremiah, that revolted against the Assyrians. You understand? This now being in the late 8th century BCE, 710, 703 or so BCE. So now the last Assyrian ruler that was ruling India was in the year between 627 and 614. Some people dated to 612 BCE. This is during the same era of King Josiah of Judah. All right, so I just want that to be noted for edification purposes. Continue on. The book I wrote. In the book I wrote, I detailed the matter of what happened between the fall of Assyria and the rise of Babylon in regards to the Israelites. The Assyrians fell to the Babylonians in the era of Jeremiah. In Nahum, the prophet, Jeremiah and Nahum were prophets during that time, and King Josiah of Judah, this being in the 7th century BCE. When we read the Babylonian came down as it was from the north, is due to the fact that the Babylonian hegemony was over where the Assyrians was. Are you able to go to the last slide? Pardon me, the last one you went to, the previous one I'm saying? All right, now if we're looking very carefully, can you focus in on me for a second, please? I want to, I'm sorry. All right, well, for those who are able to see the screen, all right, for clarity purposes, if you're looking not on the, if you're looking on the right side, where the yellow is, this was where the Babylonian Empire and the people were at. You understand what I'm saying? And so when it says that Babylon, the evil comes from the north, in the book of Jeremiah chapter 4, speaking of Babylon is because the Babylonians had ruled from where they was at in their home base over here, going toward the Persian Gulf, going all the way over here toward the Mediterranean Sea. So I wanted that to be noted for edification purposes. All right, so go to the next slide, skip that to the next one. Torah. Babylon and Judah. Warner Keller, in his book, The Bible as History and Pictures, said the following. This is a cuneiform record, and here's the translation. 10 seller of oil, Yahu king of Judah. 2.5 seller for the sons of the king of Judah. Judah is mentioned in the Babylonian records as captives. See, the Babylonians did not deny that they took captives of the tribe of Judah. The Bible does not deny that the Babylonians took captives of the tribe of Judah. Both records agree. So therefore, well, we can sit there and rest our head upon that. Okay, next. And that happened in one era, 597, and then the other at 586 BCE. Babylon fell to Persia. All right. It says Babylon fell to Persia in the 6th century BCE. Now, when I made this PowerPoint at home one day, my elder, and he rest in peace now, named G. Simeon from Old Ben-King, he kept running through my mind. You understand? So that's why I typed in his name and gave a shout out to him and so forth and so on. But that was my history teacher. I noticed a lot of people like, oh, brother, I read the book. The book is nice. Yo, I see your post online. It's nice. I didn't just pop up as a historian. I had teachers. I sat under my teachers. You understand? All right? So the Babylonians spoke of capturing Judah in Jeremiah chapter 50, 33 says follow. Thus saith Yah of hosts, the children of Israel and the children of Judah were oppressed together, and all that took them captives hold them fast. They refused to let them go. All right, it says Israel and Judah were oppressed together. So now when we understand how the tribes of Israel wound up going into the Assyrian captivity, we must know, as pointed out in the book that I wrote, concerning the era of the southern kingdom of Judah in the year 701 BCE, being taken captive by the Assyrian king
Sennacherib. You understand? This is the same Sennacherib that actually spoke about King Hezekiah of the tribe of Judah. So people, when they come to the house of Israel, talk about, oh, all of that Bible stuff is just religion. This isn't religion. This is talking about one people conquering another. Where do you get religion out of that? All right, next. The book Babylon and Timbuktu by Rudolf Windsor says the following. It says this: for Babylon and Timbuktu speaks to the fact that after the Israelites in part were freed from the Babylonian captivity, some stayed under the Persian hegemony in modern southern Iraq. Some went back to Jerusalem, and some went to Egypt and became known as the Elephantine Jew. Now I want to speak in part concerning the Jews at Elephantine Island, which is in southern Egypt, by the First Cataract. I spoke about it and I showed the Elephantine Papyrus in the book I wrote. I also showed the translation of the Elephantine Papyrus. Koto? All right, so that is dated to the era of what we call the 6th century BCE into the 5th century BCE. All right, they had what they refer to as, pointed out on Maccabees TV in the past, what is referred to as the Passover Papyrus. The Passover Papyrus is dated to the era of Darius II, who was the 27th dynasty ruler of ancient Egypt. This is 405, 408 or so BCE. The Council of Nicaea came together in 325 AD. You had black people that was of the children of Israel in the heart of Africa, keeping the law, statutes, and commandments prior to the time of the coming together of the modern Bible. So how then can you find records speaking about the ancient Israelites as the Elephantine Papyrus, the Passover Papyrus? You can look that up upon your own. The same book entitled Ancient Near Eastern Texts and Pictures, edited by James Pritchard, the book I cited earlier, also shows this particular translation and the pictures of such. Now, the argument I'm presenting is this: how is the Bible a plagiarism from ancient Egypt? In two aspects to be shown of it not to be the case. One, the translation of the Bible existed before the translation of the Mentunet. Drop strike. The translation of the Bible, even the King James 1611, was before they translated the hieroglyphs, the Demotic, and the Hieratic. The Emperor Papyrus that we spoke of earlier was translated in the 1900s or the late 1800s. That's after the Bible existed. So when did they go into the tombs of ancient Egypt and look upon the walls of Medinet Habu and the walls of Karnak and the walls of this and the walls of this and that to sit there and say, okay, this is how we want to sit there and construct the Bible together? Who did that? Because if you're trying to sit there and say that was done during an era, and this is where the punchline also comes in, if you're trying to say that was done during the era of Ptolemy Philadelphus II with the Septuagint, you're still stuck, because the Passover Papyrus and the Elephantine Papyrus predate the era of Ptolemy II, when he commissioned Israelites to go to Israel and translate the scriptures for his own personal library in Alexandria, Egypt, in the 3rd century BCE. Get your history together, people. Stop coming with this pseudo crap talking about, oh, well, the children of Israel must have gotten their stuff from the ancient Egyptians. Where's your sources at? Because I'm dealing, blessed be the Most High, with sources, logic, reason, and dating. And this is not to sound bawdy or arrogant or belligerent. The cultures are different, geography is different, and the people are different. It's only somebody who's not respectful of either Egyptian culture or Hebrew culture to say one came out of the other. That's something to be pointed out. You know who came up with that? Sigmund Freud. He's one of them who came up with that, following the Masons who came up with that prior to that in the 1800s. But here's another point. If people want to say that Ptolemy Philadelphus in the 3rd century BCE used people to get what he understood later on as the Septuagint, which is an older version of the Bible. It only contains what we call the Old Testament, by the way. And they want to sit there and say that that is exactly where they got that out of Egypt. You would think going to have to show where in Egypt did they get that from, verbatim. You understand? Well, the plagues that was written of in the Bible was copied from the emperor papyrus. So you're telling me perhaps that Ptolemy Philadelphus had access to the emperor papyrus, and then from that, he sat there and created and constructed that particular story, where the Egyptians were being posed as the slave masters who got afflicted with plagues. That doesn't make any kind of sense. Did Ptolemy Philadelphus even claim to have that even done? No, he didn't. See how sloppy it is? When they came up with this concept, they didn't do their homework correctly. Let's go. Persian Empire. The Persian Empire was from 538 to 331 BCE. The Persians made Sheshbazzar a governor. In the Bible, Ezra chapter 5:14 says the following: and the gold and the silver vessels, also of the house of God, which Nebuchadnezzar took out of the temple, was in Jerusalem, and brought them into the temple of Babylon. Those desirous the king, take out of the temple of Babylon, and they were delivered into whose name was Sheshbazzar, whom he had made governor. The word governor in there is Aha in the Hebrew. All right, that gets important for later on concerning the book that I wrote. Next, please. Persian Empire Part 2. Sheshbazzar led in 538 BCE some Israelites back to the land of Jerusalem. Next slide, please. Persian Yahoo. This is the Yahoo province in the land of Israel itself. Judah became part of the provinces of the ancient Persians. This is the bird on the other side that you look at, says Yo, hey, die. Yahoo. This is from ancient Persia, speaking about the tribe of Judah. The Yahudim, or aka the Judites. The southern, what was then, if you want to call it a kingdom, at that particular time, even though they didn't have a king of the house of David ruling. Zerubbabel and Shealtiel. Okay, Shealtiel is the father of Zerubbabel, correct me if I'm wrong. Zerubbabel is the grandson of King Jehoiachin. Jehoiachin is the son of Jehoiakim. Jehoiakim was the son of Josiah. All right? So now, by the time you get into the era with Haggai and Zechariah the prophets, you read about the Persians, Darius, and so forth and so on. The Israelites were under the Persian hegemony, and this is part of the coinage that was used to speak of the Israelites. We didn't make this up. This has nothing to do with Egypt. There's a world outside of Hatshepsut's tomb. Next. Daniel chapter 8, verse 9. And he magnified himself exceedingly. And when he was strong, the great horn was broken. And instead of it, there came up the appearance of four horns to the four winds of heaven. And out of one of them came forth a little horn, which waxed exceeding great toward the south, and toward the east, and toward the beauteous land. And it waxed great even to the host of heaven. And some of the hosts of the stars they cast down to the ground and trampled upon them. Yea, it magnified himself even to the prince of the hosts. Hathar Sarim should be translated as the chief of the princes. Should it say prince of the hosts? All right, it should say Sar Sarim in Hebrew, which means the chief of the hosts or the chief of princes, right? It says, and from him the continual burnt offering was taken away, and the place of the sanctuary was cast down, and the host was given over to it together with the continual burnt offering through transgression, meaning that through D-U-E, to the transgression of the children of Israel, you had it to where the Greeks eventually came up and was able to stop the sacrifices that was being done. All right? And it cast down the truth to the ground, and it wrought and prospered. The truth in Israelite culture is the Torah. When you go to the book of Psalms 119, verse 142. All right, now it says, and the he-goat magnified himself exceedingly, and was strong. This is talking about Alexander, the son of Philip of Macedon. All right, and the great horn was broken. And instead of it, they came up the appearance of four horns. You had Ptolemy, Seleucus, Lysimachus, and Cassander. Lysimachus came up great, as pointed out in my book, after the battle of Ipsus, when they moved into Gonos. All right, so in the book that I wrote, Blessed Be the Most High, I also get into some of the stuff that happened with the Greek Empire. One of the things I wanted to point out concerning this is the fact that, according to the Hebraic understanding of Daniel chapter 8, it says that when the Greeks came up, the truth was cast to the ground. Then we see what happened with the other stuff. Next. Strabo and Philo on the Jews. All right, now I wanted to point this out here. Respect on a human level to Kohen Mikael from Hashaba. That was my Hebrew teacher. All right, so I just want that to be noted for edification purposes. I want to cite my sources. He stated in his book, Israelites and Jews, a significant difference to follow. Philo, dated from 40 BC to 40 AD, who lived in Alexandria, Egypt, stated that 1 million Hebrews resided in Libya and Egypt from the Catabaspos to the border of Ethiopia. Next, please. Says the following. The Greek historian and geographer Strabo, 63 BCE to 24 AD, wrote concerning the Hebrews of Cyrene or Libya. Now, these Hebrews already have gotten into all cities, and it is not hard to find a place in the habitable earth that has not admitted this tribe of men. This is what Strabo, a Greek historian, was saying about the children of Israel from Libya. You know, Libya is in North Africa. The Israelites, on their own volition, scattered to North Africa. They didn't scatter to Europe in their own volition. They were taken or put into Josephus as captives into Europe. But you're not going to find the Greeks and the Romans coming from the north, coming down, descending upon the southern people, aka in this case the Israelites, and the Israelites did running up north. What happened was the Edomites, which what they call the Idumeans, they mingled in with the Greeks and then mingled in with the Romans as friends. And they, after the era of John Hyrcanus, the grandson of Matithia, Maccabee, he had taught them the ways of Israel, and that's when the Edomites went over, ran into a people later on in history called the Khazars, and taught them what we call Judaism. That is historically documented in the same book, Israelites and Jews, A Significant Difference, published in 1997 by Levitical Communications by my teacher, who was my Hebrew teacher in that particular case. I respect my teachers as stated. Chief Simeon and Kohen Mikael, they just pop up out of nowhere like, oh, that brother's deep. No, I sat and took pencil and pen and called them at night and got notes together and studied on my own. It says in the scriptures, weary out the door of the wise man. All right? So this is something I wanted to point out for edification purposes. Next slide, please. All right, the Carthage matter. Maccabees TV, I went over the fact that the Hebrews in part went to Carthage. Due to time constraints, I've been told I'm long-winded. LOL. People told me that where I work at. People in Israel have told me that when I've been up teaching. Like, okay, we get the point. You understand? One can go to Maccabees TV on YouTube and see the reference. You can type in on YouTube, Kashub Did the Torah SOS event on YouTube. All right? So if you're online, you can type it in your own volition if you care to, and I'm open to constructive criticism. Constructive criticism, not following foolishness. All right? Day night, Kashub Day night SOS event on YouTube. All right, and you'll see it has me standing there with my blue dress shirt on. All right, next slide, please. Now, let's get into the Hebrew, if you will. All right, brothers and sisters? This is taken from the book of Isaiah, chapter 32, verse 4. Now, I'm going to read the English, all right, for edification purposes, so we can gain an understanding of what we're talking about. In the book of Isaiah, chapter 32, verse 4, all right, and here is what we read, and it says the following. All right, Yeshaya, the prophet, 32, verse 4, and it says the following. The heart also of the rash shall understand knowledge, and the tongue of the stammerer shall be ready to speak plainly. Right, now, when it says the heart of the rash, Bob, the Bob means heart, meaning Harim. My heart in Hebrew means to be quick or fast. Yabing Da'at, he shall understand to knowledge. Ulshon Igli, right? And to the tongue of the stammerers, Ilgin, meaning stammerers. Timahir of the Da'at Zakot. Men hey reach, men hey reach. See, this is what happens when you sit at Hashab on the Kohen Mikael. You'll be able to go into it like that. Blessed be my teachers. Most I bless them. All right? Neem Harim and Timahir linguistically have a connection because of the root mahir, which means quick or fast. All right. So zakot is the word I wanted to point out. Now in the English, the regular Tanakh as well as the King James version, right? It says, "Shall be ready to speak plainly." The word here is translated as plainly, but they want to use the Strong's Concordance, which is a garbage dictionary reference. It's a good concordance, but it's not good for Hebrew edification. And here's part of the reason why I say that. Zakot, right, which is this word here, Zadek, Wow, Ta. Zakot. Zakot from the word Zak, Hebrew dictionary, right? This is the Ben Yehuda dictionary I'm talking about from the Hebrew English side on page 256. It doesn't mean white, but they try to say that the word Zakot means white. So if you were to read Isaiah chapter 32, verse 4, and let's read it with the bootleg definition, and it says as follows: "The heart also of the rash shall understand knowledge, and the tongue of the stammerers shall be ready to speak right." Does that make any sense in the sentence? Or does it make more sense to say plainly? Makes more sense to say plainly. Racism is horrible. Next slide, please. Let's get into the Hebrew part 2. Now, what you're looking at, brothers and sisters, is coming from the book of Isaiah, chapter 30, verse 6. I'm going to ask the brother if he's able to, at present, to read that verse for me because of time constraints, and we want to get into the Hebrew and close out. If it's not a problem. All right, we are in the book of Isaiah, chapter 30, verse 6. All right, please. You need a mic? All right, here we go. Chapter 30, verse 6.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
The burden of the beasts of the south through the land of the trouble and anguish, from whence come the lion and the lioness, the viper and the flying serpent. They carry their riches upon the shoulders of young asses, and their treasure upon the humps of camels. To the people that shall not profit them. For Egypt helpeth in vain, and no purpose. Therefore I have called the arrogance that sitteth still. Now go, write it before them on a tablet.
Thank you, brother. Isaiah chapter 30, verse 6, right? It says, Masa Bamahot Neged, Be'et Zara, Wezukwa. This keyword I highlighted, or bold type that is, Zara means trouble, right? The portion in Isaiah 30 showing the highlighted word Zara, the meaning is trouble. The word root comes from the root Zor, right? If you drop off the hay here, you get the word Zor. Zor means trouble, all right? Hebrew dictionary from the Hebrew English side, the Ben Yehuda dictionary, on page 261, so that verb means to persecute. So when the brother read through the land of trouble, this is the word it's talking about right here. The Eretz Zara, Eretz means land. All right, next slide, please. This gets into something later on. All right, let's get into the Hebrew part 3. All right, it says this: where Akata Pali beat the Aka, but saw the Baneka, Ubroteka, Ashotataka, Ya Eloheka, Bamazor. Now, I want this to be noted for edification purposes. And brother, you can go back to the other slide that we just left, please. You see the word Zara? Now go back to the other one. Remember that word here, Zara, right? Y'all go back. Bamazor. You see the man, Zadeh, Wow. Zor means trouble or distress. This is something I wanted to point out for edification purposes concerning the Hebrew. This is why you find some people say, well, the Israelites don't know any Hebrew. I sat under a state in the Hashab Mikael. Blessed be the Most High. It was the chief men in this camp here, Shema Yisrael, that asked me to instruct within the Hebrew. And it's a blessing to do so before the Most High, and certainly before the people of the Most High. You understand? We got 11 lessons online about Hebrew edification. All right? So now, getting back into what we're concerned in this particular part right here. It says, Bamazor, which means in the siege. All right? Then it goes on to say, Ko Amor Yah Elohei Yisrael. Yini, may say ekele hamilakama, asho begetken, asho atem milkami ba, et melek babel, we et kasim hazari aleken. Now that portion right there comes from Jeremiah chapter 21, verse 4. When you go and you read that in the English, it says, against the Chaldeans who fight against you, right? Hazari, Bamazor, Hazari. Brother, can you go back to the previous slide for a reason? Now, Zara, remember that right there. Go back, next one. Go forward, I'm saying. Go right, my bad. Right? Remember Zara we just went over? And then this word right here, Zari, look at all the bold type words is what I'm pointing out, brothers and sisters, and elders and everyone else included. Right? Zari is the masculine plural of the word Zar. Zara is the feminine of the word Zar. All right? And Zarot is what? The feminine plural of the word Zara. So these are certain things I wanted to point out for edification purposes. All right? So we see Matzor and Zari. Look at this particular epic right here in the bold type presentation of this. And remember, the letter mem, which makes the M sound, is used as a prefix when you change something from a verb to a noun. So a siege, like if a person, heaven forbid, is going through a siege, a noun is a person, place, or a thing. A siege will be under that category of a thing under a noun. To change from a verb to a noun, you put the prefix of the letter mem, all right, making the M sound. So Zahim and Ma'zor. Therefore, you get the understanding of what we're going to get into next. Please, Bubba, next slide. All right, we're here, Shikaya Mitzrayim, Deuteronomy 28:68, as I discussed in the book that I wrote, Blessed Be the Most High, did not happen during the era of the Romans. All right, we're here, Shikaya Mitzrayim, Ba'aniyot, Baderek Ashok, Moratilaka, Lo Tosi O, Little Ota, where he Marconatim Sham, Beha. So I want this to be noted for edification purposes. Brother, can you give me Nehemiah chapter 5, verse 8 when you get the chance? All right, now while the brother's doing that, I'm gonna try to sit there and explain from that bold type part right there. Heshib comes from the Hebrew verb stem of the word shab. Shab in Hebrew means to return. Heshib is the causative of that, to cause to go back. All right, Mitzrayim. And remember, we went over kind of redundantly about the aspect of Ma'zor, Mitzrayim, and so forth, the sword. That means distress. But they try to say, well, that had to mean the land of Egypt. So Deuteronomy 28:68 said the Lord will bring you back into Egypt in ships. It's really saying the Most High will bring you in distress in ships. That's what it's talking about. Nehemiah chapter 5, verse 8, when you get the chance. All right? It says what? Be'aniyot in ships. Baderek Asha Amorti Laka, which I said unto you, Lo Tosi O Ota. Now, when you go in your own time into the Ben Yehuda dictionary, you will see that the word Metzar means distress, and Metzarim means distresses, or plural of the word distress. It is both the same way, Metzar there, they showed them. So they too hard to figure out why the Israelites were called Mizraim, which is understood as Egypt, as the land of distress. Why did the Most High introduce himself and say, I brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage? We went over the pictures before about building up the mud brick pyramids. You gotta be in distress being made to build that. You understand? So this is just something I want to point out for edification purposes. All right. So then it says, well, he makar 10. This is the Hipa'el spin of the Hebrew root word makar. Makar means to sell, S-E-L-L. All right, so Hipakir is the Hipa'el, which means it is the reflexive of the seven stems of Hebrew. All right, and that means to sell yourself. You shall sell yourself, devote yourself, shall. It doesn't say you shall be sold. It says you shall sell yourself, devote yourself, dear, to your enemies, la abadi, for male servants, wa'alif fakot, and for female servants, wa'ain pone. And there is no buyer, there is no purchaser. I'm going to ask the brother to read Nehemiah 5:8. And let's see, because we want to sit there and expose some of the lies that they try to say about Israel. Or they try to say that we're lying. Let's go on. Thank you.
And I said to them, we after our ability have redeemed our brethren, the Hebrews, that have sold themselves to the heathen. And would ye nevertheless sell your brethren? and shout, and should they sell themselves unto us? Then held their peace and found never a word.
Now, when the brother read, says, we have redeemed our brother. When you go into Hebrew, Nehemiah chapter 5, verse 8, it uses that same root word, quana, as pointed out in the book. Quana means to buy, to redeem. That's the point I wanted to make. It's what? A lamed a verb, because it's a verb that ends in a hey. So, quaninu means we have redeemed. All right? So let that be noted. Next slide, please. All right, now put that as a joke by saying just get it started. Oh, you're long-winded, brother. I just put this as a joke. Now, everything that I'm going over, blessed be the Most High, is within the book itself. Now, according to this meme that many people are using, all right, it said that the first slave owner in America was not only a black man, he went to court and demanded it. This is who they refer to as Anthony Johnson, supposedly. See, the first question is, how did you get that picture on there in the first place? Was it done with a camera? Because he died, correct me if I'm wrong, in 1670. The click with the photography with the camera did not come about until 1825 or 1826. The first president that had that done was the former president at the time, who was John Quincy Adams in 1843. So therefore, we do have the first 5 presidents, Washington, John Adams, Washington, John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, Madison, Monroe. All 5 of them, everything of them was made in sculpture form. They took clay and sculptured it out. The click with the camera, how did in the world did they get this in the 17th century? See, this is something we have to ask ourselves, but they swear people don't read and reason. All right, this says here that he was what? The pioneer of American slavery. The definition of pioneer is a person who is the first one to set off an idea or a venture into a particular subject or matter. So according to that, he was the one who set off slavery and was called America. Now let's see how America came about. It says America was named in honor of Amerigo Vespucci in the 16th century. This was made by a guy whose name was Westermuller, who's a German, who was a map maker. All right, how can a black man be the pioneer of American slavery in 1655? That year becomes important when it says right here, Anthony Johnson sued Robert Parker in the Northampton court in 1654. In 1655, the court ruled that Anthony Johnson could hold John Casey indefinitely. So how, even if we're going by this meme, how is he the pioneer of American slavery under the subtitle there if he was given that ruling by the court of Northampton, Virginia? He could not have been a pioneer if they were the ones who were sitting up there and giving him distinction and glory, but they don't think we reason. Just like the ancient Egyptians try to write themselves off as being slave masters, but they never wrote that they were never slave masters. So is America trying to sit there and make slavery seem light with our ancestors? Let's go on, please, next slide. All right, kill the lion meme. Now, I posted this over and over for a reason before we conclude out. Let's go over some of the notes. 1621, Israel, our people that were scattered after the era of the Greco-Romans to Western Africa, Israel brought to Brazil by the Dutch in 1621. Now, let's remember, this data here is in the 1650s, where they say this black man supposedly was the pioneer of American slavery. All right, in 1646, the Dutch took Israel to New York. All right, in 1517, Charles V, who was the king of Spain, has Israel as slaves in what is now Florida. Florida became a state in 1845, and it was never a colony. The reason why I emphasize that is because many of our immediate ancestors mixed in with the Seminole Indians, running and escaping slavery even within the state of that's now called Florida. All right, so let's go on to the next slide, please. Kill the Lion meme part 2. In 1562, the French attempted to colonize Florida. In 1441, all of these dates is before 1655. We went over 1517, the Asiento situation. We went over the situation in 1621 and what the Dutch was doing, and we went over 1646. This now we're going into 1441. The slave trade started when Columbus worked for Henry the Navigator. In 1494, the Treaty of Tordesillas finances. That is to say, what is referred to as Isabel and King Ferdinand. All right? Columbus had a Hebrew interpreter named Aaron Lopez when he came to the Western Hemisphere. Why would he want a Hebrew interpreter if the Hebrews never was in existence? He knew where he was going and what he was attempting to do. All right? So they wasn't looking for people with the mental net. And by then, they already had Bibles and published. They already had Bibles out. They already were speaking about certain things in regards with Bibles. So if the Bible starts off by saying the first country is Ethiopia, mentioned over 40 times. Canaan, mentioned over 200 times. The children of Israel, also of color, mentioned over 2,000 times. They didn't even speak of the Egyptians, mentioned over 600 times. 600 times, that is, in the scriptures. All the different nations that the Bible primarily speaks of are people of color. So how's it a white man's book? Somebody's not reading. Stop reading these memes, brothers and sisters. It's going to get you looking like a fool. All right? Then let's go on to the next slide, please. Kill the Lion Mean, Part 3. In 1529, the Treaty of Zaragoza by Charles V, and he was the same who was asked to get blacks from West Africa instead of slaving the natives of this land, the Asiento, as we spoke about. This is the thing that John Hawkins, who worked for the, eventually, that is, he worked for Queen Elizabeth of England, that he took advantage of. John Hawkins didn't really bring black people to what's called the United States of today. He brought black people to what is called Colombia, Venezuela, and Mexico. All right, so next slide, please. Kill the Lion Mean, Part 4. The Dutch dropped off Israel and Guadeloupe and Martinique for the French, took over the Portuguese ships in the 1630s, and when England had a civil war in the 1640s, the Dutch took over the slave trade. All of this before the 1650s. Next, when you're supposed to be the pioneer of American slavery. Sure, you're right. All right, Kill the Lion Mean, Part 5. You're almost done. Barbados in the time of the 1640s had over 10,000 yearly shipped by the British. They needed a breaking ground for the captives, all right? And many after they were sent over to what is referred to as Barbados were reshipped to what is now called the United States. When you go into a secular book entitled The Slave Trade by Hugh Thomas, he gets into the fact that people in Massachusetts in the 1640s were requesting black people as slaves from Barbados. In the 1640s, still before the era of Anthony Johnson. What are they talking about? He's the pioneer of American slavery. All right? John Punch in 1640 was made a permanent slave. That was done in the state of Virginia. George Yardley had permanent slaves and he died in 1627. This is also in the state of Virginia. Leonard Calvert, and this is what I used to sit there and break people when I was in City College. Not to sound arrogant. Leonard Calvert had permanent slaves in 1641. How is Anthony Johnson the pioneer of American slavery in the 1650s when Leonard Calvert, who was the governor of what we call the state of Maryland today, had slaves in 1641? Somebody lying. These notes that I get, these primarily came from a book that is entitled Slavery and the Making of America by the company called Horton and Horton. And another book that is entitled, it's a college reference book called From Slavery to Freedom by Franklin Moss. M-O-S-S is that name. Okay, so let's go on to the next slide, please, and conclude. All right, as stated, and conclude. See, I wasn't too long, right? All right. Says Deuteronomy 28, 15 to 68, the condition of the blacks. This book here you can get online as a PDF. 77 pages gets into why we teach Deuteronomy 28 is about us, the history of it, and concerning of that nature. All right, so I just want that to be noted for edification purposes. The email address. All right, can you go to the next slide? All right, go back. Sorry, if you can. Thanks. All right, the video to conclusion. The email address is kashubhut@gmail.com. All right, I'll spell that out. KASHUBHUT@gmail.com. KashubHut@gmail.com. All right, if you want to contact me on the phone, my business number is 908-587-4841. 908-587-4841. 4841. All right? If you want that to be emailed to you, all right, to get the PDF format of it. This right here is the book that I'm currently promoting that I wrote, Blessed Be the Most High. Egypt talking Roddy, did the Torah come from the culture of Tom and Reed? Hopefully it's understood in the presentation that it was not taken out of Egypt. All right, so I just want that to be noted for a reason and purposes. The book costs $16.50. I recently seen somebody trying to sell it on Amazon for $38.40. If you're listening to this, stop that. All right, so it's not $38 and change. It is $16.50. Now, I want to make a disclaimer to my brothers and sisters who told me, brother, the book is well, and what you should do is, you're not charging enough. Let me explain something. We got bills, rent, which is separate than bills. You got rent. See, they call people by the name of William Bill. But see, rent is William, and bill is Bill. You got to pay your rent. You got to pay the phone bill, that's communication for a job. You need a job in order to pay William, aka rent. It's not a game out here. I'm not charging my people $25, $30 when you got single parents that may be able to want to get this. And they got 2 children. Or a brother that's dealing with child support. And he has an income that's coming in of $13 an hour. I'm not charging my people $25 for a book. That's ridiculous. I'm not going to do that. You understand? I have no problem with donations through the PayPal. But I'm not charging my people $25, $30 for a book that's only 305 pages. I'm not going to do it. That's wickedness. You understand? I did this through a company called Create Space. Now, when you go through them, they give you a proposed price. And from there, you can sit there and decide what you want to do from that particular case. You understand? So I just want this to be noted for edification purposes. All right, there's a reason why, because people been inboxing me and asking me and talking about the price that I set for it. You can't make everybody happy. If I charge $35, they'll say, brother, nobody really know you. It's too much money. You charge $16.50, well, you should have charged more. I know what I was doing. Blessed be the Most High God. All right? So I thank the brothers and sisters, the elders included, who patronized. The book is available as stated on the website. Website is this. I'm going to spell it out. danitepublications.beaguda.org. All right. DANITE Publications. PUBLICATIONS. BAYTAGOODAH.org. danitepublications.beaguda.org. You can look me up on Facebook as More Yeshaya Yisrael. MOREHYESHIAH Yisrael. By ISRAEL. All right? And one be able to get the book that way. It's available through PayPal. You understand? Let that be noted and understood for edification purposes. When somebody orders it through PayPal, and there are some who have, what happens is this. I get the notification, I get the address of where I need to send the thing out to. Many who do it through PayPal do it because they want to sit there and have it signed off by the author, which is myself. Blessed be Yah. That's no problem. I'm not going to take your money through PayPal, have it deposited into my account, and not send you the book. The Torah, as we went over, it says, thou shalt not steal. I'm not going to sit there and accept the praises and the funds from people for $16.50 and so forth and so on, and then sit there and say, well, you know what? Well, that's that. I'm not going out like somebody else that we know, where people making videos say, hey, man, where's my book at? Hey, where's my DVD at? I'm not going out like that. We the children of the Most High God, the children of Israel, the children of God. We misrepresent, we make the Most High God look stink in the eyes of the people. This is why, in part, the Most High took his name off our people because of the way we misrepresented before the Most High. So even if they disagree with your findings, They're never supposed to disagree with your character. And that's important. So just want that to be noted and understood for edification purposes. All right, so the info is there for those who are interested and for those who respect us. Thank you for such. All right, for those who may disagree, the video will be posted. You can leave your comments and attempt to be addressed by myself or anybody else. All right, so that concludes this. Giving thanks once again to the Most High, creator and maker of heaven and earth. On the human level, giving a shout out and much respect to the leadership of Shema Yisrael for the time, Prince of Paul and his sons. All right, so I'm going to conclude out with a prayer, and that be that. Torah Rabbah for the time again. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Modim Rabbi Melechai Yahovah Elohim. With Elohim Abotim. Elohim Abraham, Elohim Yitzchak, Ba'el, Elohim Yisrael. Ha'el HaGibor, Ha'el HaNorah, Ha'el Shaddai. Ha'el HaGomer Kol Debari, Wadakin Ha'el HaGore Kol Debal Aha Aretz. Bebakushaya Elohim. Tina Im Anaknu, Kasha Anaknu Zarikimo Kaliyo, Baribo Hamshao Ha'ele. Bebakusha Naya. Tik Rona et emet shoka liyot liyot al amka Yisrael. Bebakushaya. Tashub na sefatim. Tashub lanu et lishonenu. Tashub lanu et harbutenu. Begam ki tikwakna et kol ha larot. Tikwakna memenu kol ha alot. Tikwakna memenu et kol ha maklot. Tikwakna memenu kol ha makot. Na Yahovah Elohim. Bebakushaya. Tigena utbarekna et hamachane hazot. Shema Yisrael. Wagam ke tigena in nisi ehen. Wagam ke tigena in nisi koptehen. Wabakushadaya. Anaknu modim laka. Ki ata el zoke. Anaknu meluk lakim mesoritutim be'eleka. Anaknu ba'anawa, anaknu mishtakawim, anaknu mipalim lefaneka. Salat lanu, na Yahovah Elohim. Meko katotenu, wagam ko avonotenu, asher asinu, beyaka, be'eneka, beyak zakwa. Na ya, tikwak na et bene Israel, beyamika, with toshina et amka Israel, beyad simoleka, with tiyena, kunam, tiyena I abotenu, with emotenu. Tigena in akenu akotenu. Tigena in akenu wa akotenu. Tigena in balenu u notenu. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Amen. Amen. That concludes.